Welcome to the Recruiter Startup Podcast. I hope you are all very well and looking forward to the impending Christmas break. God knows we can all use it. It's been a hell of a year. I started off the year thinking we were going to bring our team to Miami for a Christmas celebration. And hey, we're just glad to still have the shirts on our back after this year. And luckily, we managed to set up 2 other businesses. And everything's still all right. Bit of a gamble, but you have to speculate to accumulate at times. And that is what my guest did, Justin McGuire, today. Justin runs a company called DMCG Global. He's based out of Singapore, lived in Dubai for a long time. The company's got offices in the UK and Australia as well. Really interesting story in the digital marketing recruitment space, and a real pioneer in that space. Looking at doing different models with this company, has a partnership model at the moment, and as well as hiring the standard full-time employee. So a blended approach to scaling his company, and really interesting story. Really enjoyed it. Hope you guys do as well. And yeah, the benefits, I suppose, of what he did with his career was move to the right market at the right time, or and he's moved at the wrong time as well. But when you move internationally, doors open up. You never know who you're going to meet. You're out there without your support network. You have to make things work. So if anybody has a chance to get that international move, it worked for me. It worked for him, and yeah, I can't recommend it enough. But anyway, over to Justin. Before I do that, actually, let me give a quick shout out to our sponsors. Any of our sponsors, we use it in our business. So Vincere is our main CRM system, and they're great. And in our scale business, we're using SourceBreaker and Odro. SourceBreaker to identify likely vacancies that we want to chase up, and Odro to create the content, the video content to chase them up, but also to pitch the retained solution as well. On top of that, big shout out to some of the people who've helped our business. Andy Hallett came in as an advisor and introduced us to Richard Gibbard, and he's made an awesome difference. So Rich has helped us with our email marketing solution, and the single biggest contributor to our business this year is getting involved with him. So big shout out to him and Recbound, his company. And if you guys need any advice on technology, NEDs, all the rest, I think I've been through or have had eyes on most of them. So feel free to hit me up if you'd like to join our private community. It's free for recruitment entrepreneurs and recruitment directors, and it's a community where we discuss best practice, technology, what's working, what's not, the international marketplace, all this amazing stuff that's going to help you make more money. So hit me up if you would like to get involved. If you're a vendor who'd like access to the community, hit up Andy Hallett. All right. Have an awesome week. Welcome to the Recruiter Startup Podcast. I am joined today by Justin McGuire. How are you, sir?
Very good. Very good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Except we can't go for a pint without getting a ridiculous meal down here in the south. But that aside, life is all right. Really good to get you on today. I've been following your journey throughout the years. Give us, before we go into your background, give me a bit about where you stand right now, what your company is, what you do.
Okay. So I'm right now speaking to you from Singapore. I'm the co-founder of a business called DMCG Global. We are a specialist marketing, communications, creative, digital recruiter. We got 60 people across 10 offices in the world. And we're a relatively new business that was formed by the founders of 3 other companies, so myself and 2 other partners, building a new entity.
Wow. Okay. Lots to jump into there. And we will do. But how'd you get into recruitment?
My journey into recruitment was one where I was actually a candidate who worked in digital marketing, but realized not a lot of people understood what I did. This is in the mid 2000s. So decided that rather than look for a job within digital marketing, I'd stick my entrepreneurial cap on and try and become a recruiter in that market, and joined a firm with a view to setting up their sort of digital recruitment division.
How was it? Plain sailing?
Joining a company? No, it wasn't at all. But they were quite interested in it. I didn't really know much about recruitment when I got into it. So the only people I knew in recruitment were those working in sort of investment banking or in the financial services sector. So I sort of went knocking on doors of to businesses sort of that were entrenched in the financial services market and said, hey, give this digital advertising thing a go. And they took a little bit of convincing, but once they did, they realized I was onto something, and we got the full backing of them and grew a really sort of successful division for the business in 2 years.
And then what? How did you end up like setting up by yourself?
So so that business that I was working for a couple of years, the Palmarium Group, they were sort of deeply entrenched into financial services systems, as I said. So when Lehman Brothers collapsed, so did a lot of their revenue, and I really wasn't the core focus then. So I was sort of, I thought trouble was coming beforehand, so sort of put my CV out, and at the time it was pretty, the market was pretty crap in 2008. So the only people that seemed to be really interested were those on the international market, and there was a company that sort of lulled me in with tax-free money and the fact that Dubai wasn't going to see a recession. And I got on a plane literally 2 months later and went out to Dubai, landed there in like the September 2008. And lo and behold, I must have dragged the recession with me and put it in the airplane, because the minute the wheels touched the ground, that was when Dubai imploded. Wow. So it was a bumpy ride.
How did you find moving to Dubai?
The first experience, as I just said, was pretty rough, because I arrived as everyone, I got a glimpse of what it was like for a few days, but then the market crashed and everything was sort of entrenched in the construction sector in those days. So I think 50% of people in Dubai were employed in the construction sector. So it was just weird. You went to, the traffic was terrible for the first few days, and then the traffic was fine. And that was a view that the recession had hit. People were literally leaving. It was when the cars were getting dumped at airports. It was, it was bizarre looking back on it. But I ended, what first was a pretty horrible experience to go through, where doing recruitment literally stopped, and it was more of a Samaritan's helpline service, if I'm honest with you. It then once Abu Dhabi flicked Dubai a substantial amount of money and took its debts away, I actually ended up being in the right place at the right time. So from scrapping around for a year or so, doing something with a friend, and I actually managed to stay on at the company that moved out as well, but ended up doing facilities management recruitment, which just wasn't my bag. I then decided to set up on my own and set up probably the first marketing communications digital firm in Dubai, and then went on a run with them.
How did that work from a legalities perspective? So what, like, you're out there on a visa, and presuming, I don't know if you had a magic money bag that was capable of going, here's $1 million. Like how does somebody go, I'm going to create a business in this country?
No, that's a really good point. So back then, the laws were quite archaic compared to what they are now. So I did the sums and worked out, with living there and setting up a business, I needed like close to £80,000. It was a ridiculous amount of money. So I wasn't going to do that. So what I decided to do was to bounce between the UK. I realized the cheapest way of doing it was to bounce between the UK and Dubai. So I went back home, not cap in hand, but almost, and got, with the last bit of savings I had from my sort of couple of years scrapping around in Dubai, basically got a little office in Hackney and basically worked there. And it was actually proved to be a strategically really good move, because I was doing digital and marketing recruitment in Dubai, where everyone had left and there was no talent. So in London, where people were unfortunately losing their jobs at the time, they were all looking for work. And I ended up being this guy who had all these opportunities in Dubai and could interview them all in London. So my clients in Dubai all thought I was this sort of miracle London recruiter could give them access to all this talent. And little did anyone know I was working on a satellite phone in a small office in Hackney, but I was moving 4 to 5 people out a month. And of course, from doing
good money.
It went, it grew really quickly, and I then managed to save up money. Now, in those days, you couldn't, right now you've got free zone enterprises, which means that you can 100% own your business. Back then, you had to go into partnership with a local. So I had to go then, once I saved up the money, I had to go and then find myself an Emirati who wanted to go.
That's an experience I can imagine. And is it in name only, or did you get like somebody who's, I don't know?
So basically the guy I got, I've to this day, I've never met, and we're still in business together. It's very interesting. You basically, he's got about 100 of these companies. And I think he was, at the time I did this deal with him, I think he was about 19 years old. So, he's laughing, he's probably driving around his Rolls Royce, had multiple companies. But I did. So he actually, what happens is he becomes on paper your 50% owner or co-owner, but then you have to sign a power of attorney away from him and all the legalities away from him. So he doesn't have any say in the firm. He's just essentially on paper. But he can be quite useful if you need him, and if people don't pay your bills or things like that, then you can sort of lean on local laws to assist you. And actually, at the time I was quite young and naive and didn't realize that could be quite beneficial to me. But
sure.
So I ended up doing that, having a DED license, they call it, and then started growing the business from there. And then down the road, I also opened up another free zone enterprise and kind of operated them together, which is quite a normal way of doing things there.
So how do you come to negotiations with this guy you've never met? Does he go, give me a set yearly fee of X, or does he try and get a percentage of rev, or what does that look like?
Each one has their own way of working, but I'm talking back in those days. But I negotiated a flat fee, and actually I did it through a third party as well. So that I knew there was a third party who could introduce me to that person, and they helped broker that deal. And then to be fair to them, they've been fantastic ever since. So I think other people negotiated on profit, and I heard some horror stories on that. So in the good times. But I think when times were tough and the locals had a taste of the profits from the old days, they didn't want their fees to drop, so would knock on the door of the business owner. So that's when things worked against them.
And not to pluck up the ears of the tax man, but I can imagine, and I'm not asking for confirmation on this, but I can imagine that when you do set up an entity like that, if you don't have kids in school and you're not a resident past 6 months in London, you could be a tax resident of Dubai and build up the coffers that way.
I mean, I had to, obviously I was a UK business when I first started up, and then I wrapped that up and moved everything over to Dubai, because I was doing, while I was in the UK, I was actually doing a little bit of UK recruitment because it made sense. I was in the right time zone, but and actually I met my now wife then as well. So I had to convince her to move as well. Unfortunately, she was up for it. So having sort of bounced backwards and forwards for a couple of years, I closed the business in the UK and then set up wholly as a UAE entity. And it's, it's pretty, there's various HMRC documents you just sign over, and then I think you're allowed in the country, it's 180 days in the first year and then 90 thereafter. So you can still pop back with a fair amount,
Yeah, no, I'm kind of going through something like this at the moment. I'm because we've got 2 young kids and they're in school, you can't, there's no way around it, but we're probably going to move to Portugal in July. And they've got a non-habitual residency there where you don't get taxed on your dividends. So it's 6%,
isn't it? You're the third person I've spoken to this week who's moving to Portugal. It seems to be there's an exodus of people I'm talking to now.
I think, if I'm honest, Brexit kind of threw me over the edge as an Irishman. Like the hatred and all of the way that was ran and stuff. Yeah. And look, we've always lived around the world, and we came back here, had kids for the last 4 years, and like did all of that. And it's like, I don't know about you, but I love expat life. Like I love the characters you meet. I love the different like sports stuff that you get involved in, and like you don't know who you're going to meet in a bar, and the interesting conversations. And village life here is nice, but it's just a wee bit too cozy for me.
Yeah, I'm like you. So I'm in Singapore now, right?
Yeah.
I've just told you the start of my journey from 2008, and now look, so I bounced backwards and forwards in the UK for a couple of years, but I ultimately I loved it. I love the expat element. So I've always lived. It's weird. I've always lived as an expat and as an entrepreneur at the same time. So I've always loved the opportunity that the rawness that throws up. Now with that comes a lot of glory, but also there can be some severe sharp pains as well, and that's what the 12 years has taught me.
Yeah, and look, sharp pains. We've all gone through it this year, but I'm presuming 2015 was a punch in the face too as well. I was in Calgary. The oil and gas price crashed, and I just started a new job as a recruitment manager, taking on a team and all the rest. And it was absolutely horrible. Everything just stopped. Oil and gas stopped. And yeah, I can imagine Dubai being one of the big centers. It wasn't pretty.
Yeah. I mean, so what we're going through now, I feel like I've had a few practice runs. I'm 41 now, so this is I think I've worked out this is the fourth one I've actually worked through downturn. But that oil price crash hit me pretty hard in the gonads, if I'm honest with you. It was, we had at the time nearly 30 heads in Dubai, and they don't, it's the employment laws in the UAE are very, they're beneficial to the employee, and there are elements that are good for the employer. But one of the things they don't recognize is redundancy. And what happened to me was when we got hit and the oil price crashed, and most of our revenue was generated in marketing and advertising, and we all know that marketing and advertising in a downturn is one of the first things to get hit. So I had to have a conversation with some people, as you do, a grown-up conversation, and say, listen, the client base is dried up. I think we're going to have to reduce in size. And people took that well, but then once they read up on the employee laws, they realized I couldn't let them go like that on, say, a 1 month salary or something. And everyone went back to me on a 3 month salary payout. So, when I had to cut the business quite hard and fast. So that was a substantial amount of money that we lost. And also like things like rent payments, they were also, they were done quarterly, and also with post-dated checks. And the way the law works there is once someone's got a check, they can, if that bounces, you're in trouble. So it's a pretty tight, watertight contract. Now, it wasn't that we weren't going to honor those checks. It just meant that we knew that we were going to take a substantial hit on, and rents just, as I said to you, things go up very quickly and go down very quickly in emerging market. And so the rent prices everywhere drops substantially. So I knew the building we were in, we were paying way over the odds for it, but there was not much ability to negotiate when they had the post-dated checks in hand. So there's some lessons you learn in the days of business. And, up until that point, we were doing 100% growth year on year, right? So I thought, my young cocky self as a business owner, I thought everything I did, turned to gold. I set up a learning and development business. I also opened up a diversity hiring platform with my wife, which, was great, but I kept doing things. The best thing I did at that time was I opened up an Asia business. So actually what happened was when the revenue started dropping in Dubai, we were really fortuitous that Hong Kong was really doing well. And that was we were growing it. So it was like tale of two cities, if I'm honest with you. You had, on the one hand, we were having to have tough conversations with people, and on the other place we were hiring. So I was able to thankfully offer people jobs in Asia, and so that we did have a bit of a migration there.
Yeah, it was fascinating, the 2015, because while we were struggling in Calgary, and I think we just about launched our rec-to-rec business at that stage, and of New York, LA, London, San Francisco, startup financial services hubs, they were all flying, So and Hong Kong as well, So it's Sydney. So
it took a little later to hit Dubai actually. So 2015 was a really good year. It was 2016 we sort of felt it there. I think,
my dad said to me 2 years ago or something, he said, "Oh, you've kind of got a nice wee system going with your business. Where's your risks?" And I said, "There's no risks. I mean, someone's going to be making money somewhere in the world. We'll just focus on that." Coronavirus, wow, everything crashed. I was like, "Oh, there's the risk. The world stops."
yeah. It's true. Although, look, I'll be straight with you. We've had a few clients, though. You know, my patch in our business, so the Middle East Asia area, has probably been quite resilient. And that's because now that doesn't mean that all of our clients have been fine. Far from it. But we've had some that have had this injection of testosterone put in them, if you want to call it that they never knew was coming. So those in the e-com digital space, you know, have had demand that they've never thought they were going to get. And actually, so a part of our business is that we do PR and communications as well. And so that I know that from working in that world for 7 years. And when times get tough, actually a lot of people lean on communicators, because particularly if you're a government or if you're a business, where a lot of my clients are embedded in, then they want to make sure that the message they get out is they're coping well.
Yeah.
So that gets leaned on quite heavily. So those two areas have actually done really well for us. But the advertising market has definitely had a tougher time.
It probably brings me on to like, so I set up a leadership network for recruitment business owners over the last while, and everybody seemed of all sizes, right? Of different groups according to the size of the company and profile of the individual, but it seems like everybody took stock as to where they're at from a tech perspective and a marketing perspective. And it was like, okay, well, let's reduce headcount, but let's figure out, and real estate and all that stuff that traditionally is the most costly, but let's invest in the tech and let's invest in the marketing. Did you do any of that yourself?
Yeah, I mean, well, we've done quite a substantial amount in this COVID year. So first of all, we pulled 3 businesses together and created a new company. So we developed different systems and structures that we could work within. I changed we moved from Bullhorn to JobAdder to join it, work where everyone else. We've kept our investment in LinkedIn Recruiter and those platforms solid. I have invested in an outsourcing team in Philippines, which has proved to be absolutely brilliant.
What do you use them for specifically?
So basically virtual assistants and resourcing. So, you know, if you want to put it one way, PAs that handle a lot of personal and business stuff, and resources that kind of work for us on a full-time basis and work on projects right across the Middle East and Asia. So they've been brilliant.
And do they speak to the candidates as well? And
no, the system that we've got is that they don't do phone, so they do everything online and then line up the calls, and then we do those. But their shortlisting capabilities are brilliant, and it saves a heck of a lot of time. Also for market mapping as well, it's been a revelation. So that's something that I never really thought of doing until this year.
We've always done that, actually.
Yeah, and there's a few people actually. There was there's been a couple of people I've spoken to at Sunny, and they sort of inspired me to go ahead and do that. So there's a guy called James Blackwell. I don't know if you know him from Ronald James Group, who I've spoken to a few times. He's great, really. So he seems to sort of understanding how to build an agile recruitment business. And I actually just called him up and said, I like what he was doing. I saw what he was doing and gave him a call and said, "Do you fancy teaching an old dog a few tricks?" And actually, great.
Our system of that. I think there's different types of virtual assistants at different levels. And for the Philippines, I've found it's good for rudimentary tasks. For more recruitment administrators that can move into something, I found Eastern European is probably the best, given the cultural alignments, the time zones, a lot on that side. But yeah, it's been a bit of a journey on that front.
Well, Philippines works well for me where I am now in Singapore, obviously, for that big thing, time zone. You know, that's a real, the fact that I can communicate with them in real time is great. And that's a real big plus. And the English is fantastic.
Yeah. And have you found anything good to go find the data? Like in terms of ask somebody to go find the mobile numbers emails, all of that stuff from a sourcing perspective?
No, I haven't done that. I think we've got quite an abundance of in-mails and things like that, and they seem to be pretty effective for us doing that, in mining numbers that way.
So you mentioned just before we came on, just how your structure is. It sounds a little bit different. Can you kind of go into what that is?
Sure. So the idea when we put the three businesses together was that we've got a partnership model, in the sense that and this is working particularly well in the UK, Europe, and US right now with our team there, is that they essentially are franchisees. So they plug into our brand name, and they take anywhere between 60 to 80% of their own earnings. We don't pay them a base salary, but they are licensees. And they have their own, obviously, ability to work on a particular sector and within a certain geographical location, and they own that, and they obviously reap the rewards from that, and we take care of all the marketing. So we have a marketing team, a social team, and then a full finance and operations team, and we've got more than 10 people in that structure. So we look after all that for them, and they plug into that and then take the bulk of their earnings. And that seems to be resonating really well with people who are sort of want to be entrepreneurs, but kind of want the comfort of being part of an established brand as well, or working with people and being able to lean on them as well.
Can I ask you a couple of questions on that? Do you pay them a salary?
No, not in the not when they're on that licensee model. No.
How do you choose the person to join? Like, what's the barrier? Like, where's the benchmark on it?
Yeah, it's a typical interview process, as you would if you were bringing someone on, because you don't want to. We've got a pretty stern no arsehole policy, because the culture is still as important as it was. Even if we're still a team, but it's the people who want the ability to earn, sort of bring in the bulk of their earnings, but not and feel confident enough to cut off the cord of a salary. So. And also some of the people, like particularly in COVID, we've got people covering the UK, but right now they're in Mallorca. They're quite happy to do it. And that again is something that's been quite liberating for people. It doesn't work. Let's be clear though. It's something that suits the more established players in the market. It's not something that's perhaps good for someone who's in the junior end, because you haven't got that ability to lean and learn of someone, and you haven't got the network and probably the experience to run with it. It works well if someone's got their own business unit and an established network right now. As we move, but as I said to you, that works very well in sort of Europe, UK, and US. In my patch, if you want to call it that, where I've got quite a few expats, it doesn't work. Legally, it's a bit of a minefield to get through, and we're still working out how we can do it. I mean, that's purely because if you want to work in Dubai, Hong Kong, Singapore, really you need to be a salaried person. Now, so in Dubai it's becoming a little bit easier to set up businesses, so we're looking at how we can work with people to set up a firm and then plug into that if they so choose to. But we're also very happy to run a hybrid model. So to get in it, we've got someone from the UK joining us in December in Singapore. Now Singapore has become very, very hard to get expats into right now. So we have to put that person through on a salary, and we will not only that, we have to prove why we want to get them over any local. Now, there's plenty of good local people to choose from, and we do have locals in our team. It just so happened that particularly for this niche and seniority, there's just not the abundance of talent here that there is, say, in the UK. So it's for that seniority, and because we're very niche in what we do, I needed someone that really understood a vertical, and that I could only find in the UK.
No, it all makes sense. I think where people have gone wrong with trying to do this model before is by not taking a plug and play person, by trying to do it on, like, trying to say, oh, hey, you've got 2 years at Robert Walters, why don't you come in now? And you're like, well, can this person survive without the machine, without the management, without all of that stuff? So it sounds like you're on it.
I think what people forget, and everyone, when they go, oh, I can do it, I can run my own business, I imagine just doing it and I get all the money myself. Having been myself, Dan, and Alan, and Adam, the partners in the firm. We've all been there, seen there, done it, and we know how hard it is, and if you're trying to do ops, marketing, social management, you're trying to do all that, you're the guy chasing the invoices as well as talking to the client. It just doesn't. Well, you've done it, right? It's not easy.
Yeah, even as a lifestyle business that we did at the start, there's still a lot there, and
Yeah.
now, like, I have full-time marketing. Charlotte does all the operations chases and all the rest. We've different partners helping us with different things. There's a whole complexity to it, and we use all the latest tech and all the latest automation, and we have a team of VAs and we've a system that we've developed over years. And like, if to start all that again, it's a big ask. There's more to it than people think.
Yeah, it makes me sweat just thinking about it. What you said, it's true, right? It's you take it for granted now. You've done it for a few years, but actually, when you just run through it like that, it's a lot.
It really is. And I'm I've launched an IT sales recruitment business this year. So I've migrated one of my team over. I've got a long-term friend of mine who tried to go out on his own recently and was like, oh, actually bit off more than I could chew here. Have him in there, and I have a really experienced hire. And let me tell you, it's tough. And I am still in there running the daily meetings as it is today. Our marketing is still doing their thing. The operations is all taken care of. And then there's the whole support network. There's a load of stuff, and it's still bloody hard. So you try and do it all by yourself now. It's hard, unless maybe you're a very experienced individual. You're administratively very good. Your time management's really good, and you're not going to go down the social route. And you're just going to be old school, hit the phone, know your niche, and you can do it. Like, people do it really well, but they're outliers.
Yeah, I think when people come on board with us, they go on personal branding courses. We have I'm an ex-marketeer that got into recruitment, right? So that actual element is within our DNA and is a huge part of what we do. So there's all, and we really sort of lean on the benefits of that. And also our client base is marketeers as well. So marketeers respond well to marketing, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to that. And I think, particularly again, I'm going to say in my part of the world where, if you've got an aggressive English or Irishman calling you up, calling you a local holding group, demanding, you don't do very well. You've got to play it a bit differently.
So just for anybody listening, so I've not to do a blatant plug, but one of the things we've done recently is we've taken 7 startups through a mastermind course, and we ran it in a 12-week program for them, and it's for people who've done that one-man thing. And here's a bit of a taste of all the stuff that you have to know really to run something competently these days. So back office setup, financial management, niche, mapping your market, your value proposition, how to run your day like a $1 million biller, podcast, personal branding, tech, automation, marketing, inbound, outbound, winning new business through that, virtual assistants, making your first hire, elevating your offer through retained services, presenting all of that in the above. And that's as much as we could just break down stuff. And even that, I promise you now, isn't enough. So I took them through all of that, and most of them have implemented a quarter of it very well. And they actually need to go into doing a specific course with an expert in that area to make it happen like really, really well, or outsource it to somebody. So the complexities, I think, of being a recruiter now in this fast-paced digital world is really tough.
Yeah, it is. And you've got to, I think it's a classic thing. What you learn through failure as well. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the nice thing is when people join us is that you've got some experienced heads there that have failed as well as succeeded, and they can talk to you through that whole process. They can talk you through, how to, how to run your desk, what things you can, how to build a business, what things you can do right and wrong, what to say on social, what not to say on social, how to approach candidates, how to approach clients, and it's and moving into new markets as well. So one of the other things that I've been trying to do in the Middle East and Asia is open up new markets and new hubs. We got very close this year to even doing something in Korea, which wasn't top of my list actually. But now I've been out in Asia, I've realized the Japanese and Korean market is, I think there's bags of opportunity there.
Let me jump in here. So I can see the way your head works. So you're always on to the next, always on to the new, on the entrepreneurial train. Who's mopping up behind you?
Yeah, so I've got a team. I've got so when let's put the old MCG, which was my business before.
Yeah.
I've got a business partner with Adam, and when you've got business,
is Adam a bit more operationally focused?
Yeah, he's a bit more operationally focused. Yeah, and I've had a dedicated CFO that's been with me for a number of years, who thinks I'm a bit of a lunatic at the best of times. He grabbed my feet and pulled me back down. And we've got a long-serving operations team who again sort of follow center. And there's the people that have been with us for a while as well. So I'm also acutely aware that I do that now. Now I'm 41, so I have to rein myself in as well, because I said we nearly did. We didn't do it, did we? Whereas a few years ago we'd have done it and then seen what happened.
So what's the process, right? Who filters all the madness that's going on in your head all day long for that to become a realistic idea? Like, is it Adam? Does it go to the ops team first? Because here, like, I'll run it past Charlotte. She'll be like, that doesn't work. Or then I'll phone up Andy Hallett and I'll be like, hey, go on, influence Charlotte on this here for me. I wanted to go, and then he'll be like, that's madness. That's not going to work. And I'm like, okay, on to the next then. Like what?
That sounds like mum and dad syndrome, like my kids do. So Adam is. So I will probably, I'll say, oh, this is a great idea, let's go for it. And Adam is quite risk averse in those areas. And actually, and sometimes I think he's a bit too risk averse, and sometimes he thinks I'm a bit too, OTT. But you kind of, I can gauge from his reactions if he thinks it could be something that will work. I have had the experience of opening up a new market and it failing, and I think I always kind of fall back on that as well. I tried to do London when I was in Dubai, and it was a complete disaster.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So I do have that, and the scars and the costs still in my head from when that happened. And when I talk to my CFO Sentil, he just sort of looks, he sort of looks at me in a way, he doesn't need to say a lot, he looks at me in a way saying, are you sure you want to be doing this? And then once I put a business case forward to him, and there has to be a business case, so what clients are there, what the percentile terms are, who we could potentially do business with, and who we're already working with and opening that up, then people are a bit more warmer to it. But when I was a younger cocky, going back to those sort of first 5 years of running, thinking everything turned to gold, and it has worked out very well opening up Asia, but I must be honest with you, my due diligence was not what it should have been, and certainly what it wouldn't be now. But the Korean market, I think I was talking to you earlier about some of the verticals that have done well for us, the e-commerce, digital, and communications. E-commerce, particularly in, say, Japan and Korea, Korea's, I think it's like one of the top 5 biggest markets in the world for e-commerce. It's enormous, right? So my eyes have been opened, and because we do quite a bit of business there from Singapore, we've been approached by companies in the UK, Australia, and other areas to help them open up there. So through their eyes, I've been seeing opportunity as well, and they have been kind enough to share their data and statistics with me. So I've seen what their business case is. So, there is a little bit more sort of due diligence than there used to be.
What's the end goal?
The end goal, I think, it used to be when I first set up is, I want to build a business to sell it, right? I want to build this business to sell it, and had zero idea how to get there. And now, I think I've realised that having opened up in a business in specifically me in Dubai, Hong Kong, and Singapore, it's a bit hard. The markets are tougher, and it's harder to scale if you're not a local in any of those places. So what we're doing now is I'm really sort of drilling down on the lessons I've learned over 10 years. And I think at least another 10 years we'll be doing this with my business partners and building a powerful brand that's a kind of a global player in our marcoms and digital space, getting every systems processes working, and enjoy what we're doing. And yeah, look, if there's someone that wants to buy our business in 10, 12 years, wherever that is, great. But if not, just we're still going to be really happy and enjoying doing what we're doing, and hopefully giving everyone a lovely life who's part of that business as well. So, if the vehicle works well, the business should sell itself, and we should all have a good time doing it. So I'm not getting, I'm listening to a couple of other podcasts that I've heard you do about people having high contract book. We're predominantly a perm business in the emerging world as well. The contract market is very tough in somewhere like Dubai or Hong Kong or Singapore, where the rules and regulations are very different. So we kind of lean on predominantly perm stuff. So I know that getting that sort of having your contract book, paying for your staff or your should we say your overheads, and your perm being the juice on top. We don't have that model quite yet, but Faden did pretty well selling at high value.
It could be RPO that you do. It could be as long as it's reoccurring. Some of the interviews I did from brokers. Some of the interviews I did from brokers suggested that you can sell a perm only business, just the multiple.
Yeah,
would be as high.
I think you can. Yeah, actually, the RPO is something very interesting. We've done quite a bit last year. We helped a big e-commerce platform scale across Asia. We put 75 people into their business. We've done many projects of 20 to 30 hires, and I think because we've got a pretty good brand name and synonymous with being, particularly in my area, if you will, people come to us and go, hey, I want to open up in Asia, I want to open up in Middle East, and we wrap up something around them for that. Now, nice thing is when we can now go back to them and offer them that in Europe or Latin, North America or UK, because there's some big businesses in Asia. Well, there was pre-COVID, and I'm sure they'll come up again. Who some potential unicorns that are launching here and have got their eyes on going into the other markets, which is different to what I've experienced before, and then we can plug into our partners there, and that's the benefit of being part of a global network, right? Is that you can share clients, and we've seen a bit more of that.
All right. Well, listen, that's us. Thanks so much. Great interview. Really, really interesting journey, and really appreciate your time.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.